Hey everybody, this is going to be a different kind of video than what I normally make. This is going to be sort of like a test run for a podcast I'm thinking of making. So, this video is going to be kind of dedicated to my dad and also raising awareness for colon cancer research. So, my dad passed away, as I think I've made clear on my channel, in September of 2015. For me, I kind of mark my entire life based on his death. Like, my entire life kind of went by super quick for me in my eyes, and I graduated high school in 2014, kind of old now, but to me it feels like just yesterday. And gratefully, my dad got to see me finish high school, but sadly he passed in 2015 towards the end of the year. So when I think of myself as my dad knew me, which was back when I was much younger, I hadn't even turned 20 yet, and I look at myself now, I look at that as almost two entirely different people. And it's almost mind-boggling to know that he passed at such an early stage in my life, but at the same time it feels he passed away when I had already developed enough to a point. Like, I was old enough to be considered a young adult, but I was never a full adult when he died. Almost to the point where I think, like I said before, I was a completely different person. Yeah, so that's why I think it's important that I talk about this. My dad was diagnosed with cancer in 2007. I was very, very young. I was born in 96, so my math isn't the best, but I was 14, 13, I suppose, maybe 12 to 13 at the time, when he was diagnosed. And I had no idea what cancer was at that time in my life. I was totally oblivious. I was just an average kid. So when I went to my parents' room one day, I saw my mom and my dad crying, and they were hugging, which was weird because, they didn't hug all that often. My dad was my dad. But when I was a child and I saw how sad they were, I was confused. I asked my mother and my father what was wrong, what's the issue, and they told me he was just diagnosed with stage 4 colon rectal cancer. That's a lot for a young kid in 9th grade to kind of comprehend, I didn't understand it at all. I just knew cancer, and all I knew about cancer was from those 2000s movies where little kids die of leukemia and stuff, and they're bald. That's all I knew. In my head, I just saw it it's going to be like a happy movie ending, oh yeah, he's going to be sick, he's going to get better, and everything's going to be great. Bad things can't happen to me. Bad things only happen to bad people, or in TV shows. That couldn't be my life. But then, I saw my father cry, and that really hit home, because he was a very proud man. He didn't show emotion like that. Going on to the next thought here, after that happened, he started going to the doctor. He started his chemotherapy treatments, which again I was totally oblivious to at the time. And his chemotherapy treatments did make him lose his hair, but to be fair, he was already going kind of bald anyway, so it wasn't much of a loss. It was more of his mustache hair and those kind of things I started noticing, and how his skin started to thin out. And he was strong before the chemo. He was a pretty bulky dude, but then post chemo he went from maybe 5'9", 5'10", 180, 90 pounds to 120, 110. It was quite the loss, and to the point where he felt thin holding him, and it didn't really seem like my dad anymore. He would always try to be there and be positive and make his jokes, and he did his best to be at every baseball game, every football game, every event. He recorded almost every single thing that we did in our lives, when we were going to school, my siblings and I. And he always would have a positive look on things. He always told me I was negative. And to be fair, I was more cynical at the time. And I regret not spending more time with him. I regret not giving him the level of attention that I needed, but he also wouldn't have wanted it to. He liked to keep to himself. He liked his job. He loved his business because he had started his own business at the time. He had been working for another company for a while in like real estate, but I think the cancer really pushed him to want to do his own thing, be his own boss, and power to him for it. Anyway, over the years, as time went by, my father and the cancer became normal. It changed our level of initial shock and fear to maybe creating more of a baseline because, as far as we're concerned, he was still alive. We still actively saw my dad. There even came to a point when we were just so used to the cancer thing, we just thought it was just every day. We didn't realize just how temporary it was. And I tell you, the human body is a powerful, powerful, powerful thing. To survive as many like chemotherapy treatments and radiation and stage 4 cancer for like 7 years of life, crazy. Usually stage 4 kills people within maybe like about 3 months to 6 months, even shorter in some cases, depending on the cancer. But like my father lived for 7, which is astounding thanks to the doctors that were helping him out. Anyway, over time with this sickness, we went back to normal, and he was back to being a jerk. Not bad, but just, like a classic dad jerk, just being a dad. And we got in arguments here and there, and there were some times I just didn't even like him. I just my stupid dad. And I tried my best to not treat him any differently just because he had cancer, because, then he would get away with saying things he shouldn't be saying. Or insults he shouldn't be saying. My dad, he just said whatever the hell came into his mind. He didn't care. He was savage as hell. That's why sometimes he could come off like a jerk, but in a loving way, like any dad would. So I think that after it became normal and we became complacent, he had a surgery, and it wasn't just any surgery. It was supposed to be like his big surgery that would determine what's going to happen, because by 2012 the chemo and the radiation had done as much as they could, and they had shrunk it enough to the point where they could remove the tumor, the large mass that was growing basically in his buttocks. So I was going to school that day, and I remember just being super concerned and scared on what the results were going to be when I came back home from school, or calling. I was calling my mom every 2 hours for an update. I think it was a 14 to 18 hour long surgery, and I couldn't focus at school. I was so scared. Nothing could make me feel better. No amount of calmness or talking or anything, nothing. All I could think about was, by the end of the day, I was going to hear if my dad was going to die or not. And thankfully, the surgery was a complete success, and it was a new trial surgery as well, so it was recorded for, I think, future science and students to learn from. But it was a great success, and they removed it along with a good portion of his, I think, tailbone region. So he lost a lot of the nerves in his butt, and it hurt to sit down, and a lot of other things were cut out. Like, he lost some of his lungs as well, because the cancer had spread to his lungs by this point. It was very aggressive, and his body was never the same after that. He lost some of his intestine, so he had to walk around with I forgot what it was called. It was one of those bags that people carry. Not carry, but those bags that get attached to your intestine when you can't release your fluids on your own anymore. He got the bag. He got one of those, I forgot what it's called, the little pads, the chemotherapy pads that are in your chest. He kept one in there all the time now, instead of just chemo pills or an IV. And he weighed even less than he did before, and he was still my father, but I could tell that the surgery, the radiation, and the chemo had destroyed his body, and he physically did not look the same anymore. But at the same time, he was alive. He could go to my baseball games, my track and field races, my brother and sister's events, and he could still play games with us in the house and talk about TV shows, and that was enough. It was fine. As long as he was alive, it didn't matter. And that was in 2012. So fast forward a good whopping 3 years to 2015. After the cancer had been reduced in 2012, it came back, and it was more aggressive than ever before. And again, I'm very against chemotherapy for this exact reason, but as many people know, there is a good 5-year survival rate for a lot of cancers. Even some breast cancers have been pretty much cured, but like a lot of these more aggressive cancers, they don't live past like 10 years, for this reason that the chemotherapy is poison. They're poisoning your body. They're destroying good and bad cells. So when they poison the hell out of it, so much so to the point where there is no immune system, when that cancer comes back, and it always does come back, because again, surgery and removing a tumor, you're not removing the cause of it, you're just removing a large chunk of it. The cancer returns, but you have no defense or white blood cell count that can fight against such high levels of toxin. There's nothing you can do. So you're basically getting the same level of disease with less of an immune system to fight it back with. It's instant death. There's no coming back from a cancer returning, usually, especially when it's caught at stage 4. We were lucky we got the time that we did have with him, to be honest. Anyway, after it came back in 2015, I started noticing some differences. My dad was in more pain. He would have to walk around the house at nighttime just to kind of distract his body from the sheer agony that he was in. I didn't know that till much later, after he had passed, that's why, because I used to get annoyed because I came home really late and he'd just be walking around the house. I would always assume that, he was just being annoying and like going through my stuff or going through my brother's stuff or like waiting for me when I would come home. But I came to find out later that he was just trying to relieve the pain in his body, and he never complained. Not once did my father ever complain to me or anyone about the pain. He was a very strong man, and stronger than me, and he did his best to support us as a family. So after we started noticing some signs, my mother took him to the doctor again, and the doctor told us that he obviously the cancer's returned and it's more aggressive than ever. Except, unlike before, the doctor told my mom to just take him home to be with his family. He basically made it clear that this was the last chance. There's no real coming back from the cancer this time. So my father was sent home, and he was basically told that he had 6 months to maybe 9 months to live. And the insane part is that at 42 he died. At 42 he died. 7 years from that, 37, 38, I don't know the math on that. He was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer at not even at 40 years of age. That's so wild to me. No signs, no symptoms, no prior knowledge. He did come from a foreign country, so their medicine was not the best. So even if he did have something, he never would have known. But even if he had been in America, they don't really test you for those kind of things unless you have a previous history of the disease. So even if he had been here, he probably wouldn't have known, especially back in the 80s and 70s and 90s when it wasn't as advanced. So the cancer, colorectal cancer, takes 10 years to form. Doctors are able to screen it actually very early, and if they find a polyp in the rectum, they can cut it out before it develops to cancer. The problem is, like a lot of highly aggressive cancers, it's totally unpredictable. Unless you have a family history, there is no way to know if you should get tested for it or not, and it costs a lot of money, and insurance companies are not just gonna dump out thousands of dollars for a random person to get a random, you know, colonoscopy to check for polyps that are potentially precancerous, you know? So, unless you're packing money, or unless you're like aware and you're cognitive of all the different types of special diseases out there like that, you're not going to get screened for them. So my father, unfortunately, was one of those unlucky few. After so that year, we knew he was going to die. He made it very clear to us he was going to die. My mom made it clear to us he was going to die. So going forward, we took a trip to Disney World that year, and we made the most out of it. We bought matching shirts. We went on as many rides as possible, or that my dad could have went on. He loved roller coasters, even though my brother was terrified of them. And we made it one hell of a last trip, because Disney has always been a very special place for my family. We've been on family trips to all over the place with him. And he wanted Disney World to be the last vacation that we ever had as a family. And that was the last theme park I ever went with my dad to. So the last time I went there was in 2019. And I think even just being back at Disney World was bittersweet for me, because it's like, damn, the last time I was here, I was with my father. You know, the last time I rode these roller coasters or rides at Magic Kingdom was with my dad and my family. And he'll never do it again. So we made one last trip to Disney World, and we had a really nice drive. We were able to visit different parts of Florida, explore, and it was a hell of a trip. It was a hell of a last trip. I think my father opened up more to me in that last 3-month span of time than he ever had before. And we all came home, and even though it was a fun adventure, we really had to sit down as a family and think about what the next steps were going to be. My mother had went with my father to a funeral home, and they picked out cemetery plots for him. When they found the cemetery plots, I'm assuming she picked one out for herself and my dad so they could be buried together. And I think about that sometimes. I try to think about it like my father is alive, going to a funeral home to pick out where he's going to be buried. Like, the mental anguish it takes for me to even conceptualize that is beyond me. Like, I can't imagine being in that position. Like, it's one thing to die knowing you don't have anyone who's going to really miss you, or no kids or anything. But to know that you're dying and you're leaving behind a family who's going to miss you, that kind of fear makes me not want to have kids to begin with. You know, that's a terrifying feeling, to know you have so much to lose when you love people, and to know you're not going to see them grow up or get married or get a good job or be successful. That's mind-boggling to me. So he truly was a soldier. And after picking out the dirt that he wanted to get buried in the spot, he went home, and he went home to die, basically. We lived at home for a while. Everything was chill, but the cancer did get progressively worse. His legs started to swell up. His organs started shutting down. He started becoming more senile. He became very aggressive. And eventually, over time, the dad that I knew had shut down. His brain and his function stopped working normally. So I'd say about his last week of life, his side of the family came back from their foreign country because his mom wanted to spend time with him in his last, days and weeks of life. And she did. His mom, so it's like a nice end of the story. His mom was the start of his story, and his mom was there towards the end of his story. So she took care of him, and we were there, and my father he wasn't him anymore. At that point, he was just like a body, and the cancer had damaged him so much that his mind was gone. So my father died way before he actually physically died in our bed at home. So she was taking care of him. Everything was great for a little while. He was still making jokes even though he wasn't all there in his head, but it was nice that he was still alive. But that was my first real encounter with, it wasn't my first time seeing someone die, but To see someone that I've basically spent my whole life with, my own dad, to see him so near and close to death, that was my first time seeing that. And when the week had passed and his legs had gotten to the size of like a couch, like a mini couch, right? We were in the room and he started just coughing up absurd amounts of blood, like the amounts of blood that like anime characters have when they're punched super hard, like just from the mouth, like blah. And we were rushed to the the ER, the emergency room, and the doctors did the best they could, but as soon as they were briefed of his condition, they knew that there wasn't much time, and they could tell that, he didn't have a lot of time, so they just gave him some extremely high dosage of painkillers to relieve the pain to make him more comfortable, and they sent him home. We then were assigned a hospice assistant, and the hospice assistant came to us to help, record the time of death. And when the hospice worker was there, it really hit home. He looked sick. He was puking out blood. There was a freaking VITAS nurse in the hospice. VITAS, same thing. I don't know what country, some of the audio, but that's just another term we use for them. A VITAS worker, a hospice worker, is in the room. It's like in my head I'm thinking, oh my God, my father is going to die. And I tried my best to take as many photos and videos, but he didn't want that. I asked him even before he got that bad, Dad, do you want to record something so that we can have of you for later? And he didn't want that either. He just wanted absolute privacy. And it's his dying wish. He gets what he wants. I'm like, okay, Dad, I'll do what you want. And I just tried my best to just stare and watch. I didn't take my eyes. I just tried to spend as much time at least just looking at him, even though he couldn't talk, as possible. I wanted my eyes to burn that memory into my mind of my father and the state he was in and how he got to this position. I didn't take my eyes off it, not even for a second, because I wanted every moment to be viscerally burned into my mind. I'm getting a little emotional as I'm recording this audio podcast thing. And when I saw him and he was just lying there, he looked me dead in my eyes because my brother and sister were asleep. My mom was in a different room. He looked me in the eyes and he said, I love you, son. I love you. And he just started shaking uncontrollably in the couch. And then my mom helped him up to the bed. And my mom is a very petite woman. She's like 5 foot. And she was able to just pick him up easily, like a skeleton, because he barely weighed anything at the time. It was just his legs that were heavy. I don't know why the science is behind that, though. Like, maybe someone in the comments can poke that out, or I'll Google it after. But anyway, he just started shaking in the bed, and I was just staring, watching him shake and convulse. And then my instinct reaction was, go get my brother and sister. And I screamed and I ran through the house and I told him, get over here. You're not going to want to miss this, not even for a second, because then you'll regret it the rest of your life. And we saw him die. We saw him cough up blood. We saw him breathe his last breath. And all I'm thinking is, how must he feel seeing his children and his wife scream and cry as his vision just goes black. I hope he heard us before he passed. But then I don't want to know that he died suffering, knowing that we were all in so much pain. I'm gonna hope that his mind was gone before he actually died. I made a promise after that I'm not gonna waste a single day. I'm going to never lose to anything. No fear, no worry, no pain, ideology, argument. I'm not going to let a single day go by that I didn't live it to the fullest on my terms. My dad did not get to live a full life because of the disease, because of cancer. So I promised myself that I would be damned if I didn't give my my body the chance to live a full life. And I've made every effort on my part to push through any hardship I get because of my dad, because of what he went through and all the sacrifices in his life that he made so that I could be successful now. After he died, I was in a lot of pain as an 18-year-old. So I left and I went to a different place in my house, and I just ignored it. I didn't even get to see when they took the body away. I wish I had seen that, but I missed it. I was just in such shock that my dad was in a bag and getting taken out in a truck that I just couldn't take it, and I just left. I just had to leave. I couldn't be there. I didn't know where. I just couldn't be there. And after I left and came back and I saw his body was gone, the morning after, it was just numb, raw emotion. Everything felt surreal. My mom, my brother, and my sister and I went for a drive, because that's what my family used to do. We used to go on drives just to talk as a family, just for fun. His seat was empty, and it felt empty, and I just never got over that. When my father died, a part of our whole family died. We're still close as a family. I have always been closer with my mom, but my dad was the keystone of my family. He was the family, and when he died, the family died with him. So, after that, I stopped counting the days after when he died. It just became a thing I still to this day have not dealt with. I still have not accepted the fact that he's dead. I just shoved it to the back of my mind and focused on other things, and I've done that for about 7 years now, and the pain never goes away. Ever. But following the story, immediately after he passed, there was a huge concern for my family that the cancer could be genetic. So, in response, I was taken to a hospital, and they screened me for colon and rectal cancer and other diseases, and they also tested my genetics for other syndromes that could produce other forms of cancers that could also be genetic, and I was clean, at least for now. Anything's possible in the future. They disclosed to me honestly that our technology now could say you're fine, but 10 years from now, they could have better technology and something could be found, so you're never 100% sure. So, I was just happy I didn't have cancer. But because of my dad's passing, the insurance companies now have full reason to give my brother and my sister and I cancer screenings. So I'm sad that my dad did have a cancer, but if there was a type of cancer for him to have, I'm grateful that it was colorectal cancer, because again, it takes 10 years to form, and if caught early, it can be stopped before it becomes anything bad. So we get screened every 3 to 5 years just to be safe. My last screening was in 2021 of March, before I left for AmeriCorps the second time, and that was terrifying. But colorectal cancer is not talked about as much as like breast cancer or even pancreatic cancer. It's there, but it's a fast growing type of cancer in society now. Like, it's getting more younger people are getting it, and I think the average age of death is between 38 and 45, because I think a famous person that was killed from it was the actor that played Black Panther. I think he also passed from colorectal cancer, and I can't really think of anyone else off the top of my head, but my dad was 42. I think he was like, the actor was what, 43, 41, between there. So it cuts your lifespan pretty much in half. Very deadly, very unpredictable. And I think the best way that it can be fought on this is, I'm putting my opinion in here too, is eating healthy fruits, vegetables, constantly juicing, and drinking plenty of water and exercise, just living a healthy life, cutting back on smoking and alcohol if you do that. Just trying to put as few toxins in your body as possible. But it just gets increasingly harder because, everything contains some form of toxicity in modern 2022. Even the vegetables, unless you're getting organic, have pesticides sprayed on them. Unless they're like home farmer grown, like you see them growing, there's a high chance that it has some form of chemical. And that's not even accounting for other products. Like, you don't, like medicines over times that damage your liver, like simple medicines, or high fructose corn syrup that's known to cause diseases and in some cases be listed as a carcinogen. Red meat, processed meat, dairy milk, and chemicals that everything's laced with something that increases odds of cancer. So for colon rectal cancer, which directly deals with like the intestine and your stomach and what you're pooping out, high fiber, high vegetables, high fruits, all this information are things that I had to learn after he died. So in response to my father's death, I became a bit of a hypochondriac, and I was constantly in fear of cancer. My mind blew the hell up after, because I was constantly in fear to it, so much so that I had developed almost a form of I don't know what the term is, but I developed an internal fear of just cancer, like from the trauma of losing my father. I was going to bed late every single night. I was researching the hell out of everything with cancer. I thought I had cancer. I thought I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. I thought I had colon cancer. I thought I had rectal cancer. I thought I had stomach cancer. I thought I had a brain tumor. I thought I had every kind of cancer under the sun. And it broke my psyche, and it destroyed whatever time I had left in college for that time period. So after that all happened, I got to the point where I'm not going to say I stopped worrying, but I accepted I was going to die. And in that time frame, I became more free than I ever had been before. Because I got to the mindset, well, if cancer's going to kill me, it's going to kill me. That's it. There's nothing I can do. I might as well enjoy the time I have left. And I think that while I'm not grateful for that kind of fear of cancer, I will say that that fear of cancer gave me freedom, in the sense that now I'm not worrying about it anymore. It pushed my mind to this state of if I got a bad result from a doctor, I would be scared and horrified. But in my mind, I've already on some level accepted death. I'm gonna die someday, and whether that's later or sooner, it's gonna happen. And that has honestly helped me power through a lot of these scared moments. I think I'm not even really scared of dying so much, so it's more how I die and if it's painful, or if it's quick or sudden. But the one thing it's the cancer I don't want. I would rather die suddenly and accidentally than to slowly wither away while my loved ones watch me, due to all the trauma that I had from my father. So when I was in this really terrified mindset, I would buy kale, spinach, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, bananas, and I would juice them and blend them, and I would just drink 64 ounces of it a day. I used to follow a YouTuber called Chris Beats Cancer, and he would give testimonies and stories of people who were finding alternative methods to fighting cancer. I would look up different forms of therapy. I would look up all these different health things. I'd buy wheatgrass, spirulina, all these superfoods that are known for fighting cancer, and I would just consume as much of it as humanly possible, because I thought I need to survive, and this is my only way to survive. Now I don't do it as much because like I said, I don't feel like I'm at death's door anymore, but at that time I was drinking those smoothies like I was going to pass. If I didn't, I was going to die the next day. That's how serious I was. So I drank all these healthy things and superfoods for about 8 to 9 months. I was I felt more healthy in that time frame than I ever had been before. I've never been as healthy as I was in that time frame. My skin cleared up. I was feeling more energized. I was feeling healthier. It's crazy how much, like, when you're overloading your body on nutrition, how good it feels. But, the cons were my mental health was trash. So, we were on a trip in 2017 when we went to South Carolina with my family, and we also invited extended family. And I think my body just overloaded on so much vegetables all the time and so much vegetable juice that I couldn't take it anymore. And I broke down, and I had some Popeyes, some good old Popeyes and Church's chicken. It was delicious. I hadn't had meat in like 8 to 9 months, so that really, wow, was delicious. And after that happened, I just fell back into eating not unhealthy, but not just having vegetables and fruits all the time. And that same day after I had that chicken, my body just vomited. Like, I kept puking and puking because my body was so unused to eating like meat and things like that again that it rejected it. And whenever I tried to have more smoothie, I would just puke it out again because my body just was tired of the smoothie and it needed substance again. I couldn't even smell vegetables for about like a year after, because just the smell of it made me sick and nauseated, just to all the bad memories that my head associated with vegetables. I've slowly eased back into it, but I think AmeriCorps also destroyed that rhythm as well, because I was unable. I had my blender with me and I made vegetables when I could, but like, you don't have the luxury of having fruits and vegetables in every area you go in AmeriCorps. So now I'm trying to get back into my health, and I'm trying to really get my body back on part. So I know this is a different kind of video, but I really want to raise awareness for cancer. And if you or anyone out there that feels like you have any signs or symptoms, get tested. If you feel any lumps in or any lymph nodes that are swollen, get tested. Or your armpit, your groin, your neck. Because I used to check myself a lot, and it drove me crazy. And I'm not a doctor, so in hindsight, I should have just gone to the doctor sooner. I can't tell you guys how many times I went to the doctor and they told me, listen, kid, you're fine. Come back to me when you actually have it, and we'll have a conversation. Like, it's like every time I felt a new lump, it just turned out to be just a normal lymph node. But before, I'm not really looking at my lymph nodes, but now that I'm aware of them, every little thing became cancer to me. So my doctors got sick of me, but who cares? I'm paying them. They should be getting sick of me. They shouldn't be getting sick of me. So if you feel anything, get tested. Cancer is a big deal. It's still relevant. I think it's up there along with diabetes and HIV/AIDS, because it's one of those deadly diseases that people just get in mass amounts that there's no cure for, unfortunately. I'm not a doctor by any means of the imagination. Seek professional help. But I personally, due to my experiences with my father, I don't believe that poisoning the body will ever make it healthy. So I am vehemently against using chemotherapy. Not for all kinds of cancers. I know some smaller versions of smaller cancers, like certain breast cancers, and skin cancers can be totally dealt with. But like, for the most part, I'm against chemotherapy. I'm for surgery, but I'm against chemotherapy and radiation, because I think those things are the opposite to the effect that they have on the body. It might deal with it in the moment, but it's destroying your system as well. And I truly think that there are alternative methods of treatment that can be also tried, or maybe even attempted first before moving on to those last resorts, but that are ignored. I've heard the argument all the time, if like alternative therapy worked, why isn't it called science? If alternative medicine worked, it would be called medicine, right? Everyone's heard that before. But like, again, chemotherapy doesn't work at all. For some it does, but for the vast majority, their cancer is not cured. It just goes in remission for right now and destroys their chance of surviving because there's no immune system. So like, that's not a cure, and it's still called medicine. So what the hell? I think it's worth a try, and I wish more places attempted to try it, because the success stories of those are not going to be told, or they're just going to be seen as fake or like quackery. When I'm looking at it, the way I see it, it's like, why not give them a freaking chance? Like, what do you lose from trying it first? If it fails, you can go back to chemo. Anyway, thank you for hearing me out on this story. I just really wanted to be open about this, guys. I miss my dad, and I couldn't sleep tonight again, so I shoot out another vlog. It's a little different. This is gonna be a podcast kind of thing, and I might be starting a new YouTube series on this, or I might just make a podcast channel. I'm not sure yet, but this is the first one. It's gonna be called, well, I don't know. I guess I'll just put it in after I'm done editing. Thanks, guys.